Well, Andrea, I don't think you could talk about budget priorities and not talk about cuts. But since you said I couldn't.
No, you can talk about cuts, but you have to be specific.
Yes.
You can't just say wasteful spending. That's too generic.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I think we have to look at new revenue sources, and everything's got to be on the table. One example could be the economic development budget. Our economic development results in our economy growing, businesses. When our economy grows, people are hired. When people are hired, they make money. When they make money, they spend money. More money is brought into the state coffers, which helps with our state fiscal situation. The legislature, I think, has to look in the mirror at themselves and look where wasteful spending is occurring right within their own office. For example, duplication of services. Even to the point of our state representatives. If there are two offices, for example, I'll use the 114th and the 115th. If these local offices, district offices, are within a half mile of each other, do we need to be paying rent? Do we need to be paying electricity and heat on two separate offices? Now, I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs in terms of office workers, but why can't we combine these offices and operate out of just one location where we have one rent, we have one light bill, we have one electric bill, but still allow the workers of the 114th and the 115th to operate. I think we could look at what New Jersey has done. Earlier this year, they passed a law that requires state employees to pay 1.5% of their health care, saving the state $300 million. I, as an elected official, would have no problem with paying even more than 1.5%. It's still better than what I pay in the private sector.
Thank you. Dan, anything to add?
Just that we need to look at the fleet of cars and vehicles that we operate as a state. It's vastly abused, and I would look to cut in some of the autos.
Okay, thank you. We'll continue on with the topic of fiscal policy. And on this question, I want to focus on the whole process in passing a budget for the Commonwealth. As we all know, we've had some issues in the past with budgets that were passed late. What steps will you take to advocate and implement a timely, efficient, and effective budget process that doesn't rely on balancing the bottom line with one-time or stopgap or reactionary policy decisions? And the question goes to you, Sid.
Well, I think the first thing we have to do, the governor of Pennsylvania gives his budget address in February. The deadline is the end of June. And it seems as though our legislators don't start working on the budget until June. Once the budget address is given in February, it's followed almost immediately by budget hearings. It should be followed immediately by our legislators, our elected officials, getting down to business and solving the problem of balancing the budget or coming up with a budget for that fiscal year. And we should have learned a lesson 2 years ago when we had a budget that was more than 100 days overdue. The people of Pennsylvania, so many people suffered. Workers suffered, people who relied on state agencies suffered. That can't happen again. I mean, we can't have that. And one of the things, let's hold that over the legislator's head. If a budget is not passed on time, no paycheck. You do not get a paycheck until a budget is passed. Cut and dry. There should be no question about it. Maybe then our elected officials will be serious about getting down and not causing pain to the people of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Dan, the same question.
One of the things, being on the school board, it's been very frustrating because every year we have to have a budget in place by July 1, regardless of whether we know what our revenue is going to be, which for the last 8 years actually has taken place. And we worked, despite that, we put a budget in place. There's no reason that Pennsylvania should not have a budget in place. We need to look towards a 2-year spending plan. If you have a spending plan that's in place, for the following year, you can work off of that. And it's very frustrating when you see legislators not doing their job. And not only should they not, a paycheck not be written out to them, I don't believe they should be paid during that period at all. You know, they should lose money because they haven't accomplished what they were supposed to be doing. They haven't done their job.
Thank you. Sid, anything to add?
No, that's fine.
We're going to move on now to the question of higher education. We're here on the beautiful Keystone College campus. And my question to you, and Dan, you'll answer first, is what role should state government play in ensuring that Pennsylvania residents can obtain and afford higher education?
If we want to have economic success in Pennsylvania, we have to tie our business community with our educational system. You know, and it's going to take education in the future with the jobs that are coming down the road. Be prepared. So definitely have to have a very strong role, but it has to be one where we're educating our students for the jobs that are going to be available. And those jobs are changing almost yearly, you know, so we have to make sure that we're prepared for those jobs and tie our business community and our educational community together to provide for that.
Sid, same question.
As a parent who is still paying for one daughter's, or helping one daughter pay for her college education, and currently helping another daughter pay for her college education, it makes me feel a little bit more secure that the state is providing funding to our schools and giving us the opportunity to receive funding through several state agencies, and that they're giving money to. My daughter goes to Temple University, and believe me, it was gut-wrenching for a while there last year before the budget was passed, when we weren't sure whether our colleges, some of our state-funded colleges, weren't going to get the money. But everything revolves around the education of our young people, and we need to allow every high school, or give every high school senior the opportunity to get an affordable college education. We can't, and again, they need that opportunity. What they do with that opportunity is up to them, but we need to allow them to have that opportunity. I think that's the duty of the state, because once again, when we educate our children, we've fallen so far behind in this country to other countries when it comes to education. We've got to get back on track. We've got to get our children educated. We've got to allow them to compete in a global society, because when we are able to compete and we are able to train our young people for jobs, then it goes back to what I said earlier. They earn money, they feel good about themselves, they spend the money, they put it back into our state budget, they put it back into our coffers, and everybody benefits. So I think we do need to continue to fund higher education.
Dan, anything to add? The next question also pertains to education, but let's move it down to elementary and secondary education. What do you see as the appropriate balance between federal, state, and local government involvement in elementary and secondary education in Pennsylvania? And Sid, you respond first.
Well, we all know about No Child Left Behind, and it's a great program, but our federal government are hitting our school districts with mandates, and then they're not following up those mandates with funding. So I think we need to do something where, if the federal government is going to force school districts and force schools in Pennsylvania to adhere to No Child Left Behind, then the states should turn up the screws on the federal government to get the funding to help out with this. Now it's up to the taxpayers, just to the school districts, and then where does it fall? It falls on the taxpayers. It falls on me. It falls on Dan. It falls on everybody in this room. It falls on the property owners of the school districts. We need to make sure that our federal government, if they're going to force our school districts to, again, adhere to certain policies or programs, then they follow that up with the money that we need. I also agree with any kind of funding that our state government can give to elementary education, younger education, because that's where the foundation is formed, that's where the basis comes from, that's where our children are going to learn, essentially learn to be educated, so that they can go on to be good students later on in middle school and high school, ultimately in their secondary education, their college education.
Thank you. Dan?